give the mic a moment to sync. All right, Stochastic, here we go. It's your old pal EMac coming to you on a Saturday morning here, joined by man, myth, and legend. Not man, myth, and Malachar, but man, myth, and legend, Greg Ehrenberg, the man who literally never sleeps, works nonstop, 365 days a year, sometimes 366. My friend Greg, what's going on? It's been like, oh my gosh, 6 days since we've done a show together. Did you miss me?
Well, so for a second there, you said man myth, and I thought you said mammoth. I was like, oh, what makes me a mammoth? I wanted to know.
Well, you heard like Greg, but today you're nerd ass Greg.
True.
But yeah, we've got a fun one tonight. I do see that the sites have excluded the 9:30 Lone Outpost game, so that is, I guess, helpful. It also puts I guess they're assuming more eyes are going to be on NFL. We do have 2 NFL games today. This is the start of Wild Card Weekend. Remember, it's now Super Wild Card Weekend. We have 2 games on Saturday, 3 on Sunday, and 1 on Monday. It's Monday Night Football. Monday is also Martin Luther King Day, which means there will be NBA throughout the afternoon. So that is always a fun one. And then let's see what hockey's doing. Usually they tend to do something similar. Yes, hockey is also going at 1 o'clock with a bunch of games and then a few evening games. So people taking advantage of those that have the day off, recognizing that holiday. So good times there. Greg, we don't get that holiday off at either of my jobs, at the Stochastic job and the day job. We don't get that one off.
It is a nightmare for scheduling, because I look at the schedule and I have to ask people, are you available to do this show? What times are you available? Now, I legitimately have no clue what the main slate lock is going to be for Monday. I tend to think they're still going to do the 7 p.m. Eastern time lock for the main slate. Like, I don't think that they're going to do a slate that includes all the games. I don't think they're going to do a 6 o'clock lock, but I'm not positive. So hopefully it starts at 7, because I've set the schedule assuming that's what it's going to be, but you never know.
It is true. I see Nick Ostertos points out, yes, we have the MMA starts today. Yep. I think that's a 4 or 4:30 lock for that sport. Not a pay-per-view this week, but they already have 4 pay-per-views scheduled over the next 3.5 months. So I was looking at the schedule for that. Got to get those crowns, Greg, while I still can. Although I'm losing interest now that I don't get that weekly crowns prize chest, because even though I never got more than like the 20,000 minimum, occasionally I'd get 30,000 for the Onyx tier. That's like an entire season of some of these milestones. And it's like, wait, I would get that in a week, and now I got to grind this stuff out for 6 months. I gotta think about this to get some of these longevity bonuses, but we'll see, because I may have to move on to some of the pick'em sites. Sports wagering, of course, we're sponsored by BetMGM today. We've got some offers through them. I'm in Alaska. God, I'm as far away from Alaska as you can get here in Florida. We have one lonely sports book that operates here in Florida. That would be, I can't even think of it, the Hard Rock Casino. I've got to sign up for that, Greg, but it's just not exciting knowing there's only one, and I can't use the Odd Shopper to help me out, but I have been using the Odd Shopper. We'll look at that later in the show, but I looked at the Odd Shopper, what do we call it? The look across the different pick'em sites. Mm-hmm. Oh, that's so great, because most of these pick'em sites, with the exception of Prize Picks, they're only on mobile. Greg, when you get old, looking at mobile, it's not fun. It's not fun, but that helps me find all the bets I need. Then I just go into the search bar, type them in, boom, we're off and running. It's like I have a new lease on life and didn't have to get a pair of readers.
We have to send you a giant monitor. You need, and I'll show you what I have. I've got a bunch. When I do shows and stuff, I have a bunch of monitors. You're saying
I could push my iPhone onto a monitor and then see what I'm doing?
You can do that. You can.
What does Scuba do?
What does he do? Nothing. Yes. So if you think that you're old and outdated with technology, he doesn't know the difference between a text message. And by the Scuba is my dad. He doesn't know the difference between a text message and an email. He got a new iPad and he wasn't happy with it because it doesn't have the home button anymore. So he insisted, that was all he wanted for the holidays, was he wanted me to get him a new old iPad. He wanted one of the old generation iPads that had the home button. I told him that was so dumb because they're discontinuing, so he's never going to learn new technology. So I refused to get it for him. I got him an elliptical for the holidays, so something that could keep him in shape, because he likes working out, but his elliptical that he used to have broke. So got him a new elliptical. That aside, yeah, he is so outdated on every single technology. And the everything turning towards streaming is going to be absolutely no good for him. We've got the NFL game today that is going to be streaming only on Peacock between the Chiefs and the Dolphins. The new world is not going to be for him.
No. And I was telling that story. My mom's been down here with us in Florida for the last couple of months, and she's got a couple of weeks left with her here, but she just celebrated her 80th birthday. And I was telling her the story of your dad wanting the push button, because my dad, before he passed, he only had the flip phone. So even though you could have like everything on it, his text messages, he would have to push each number 2 or 3 times to get the letter he wanted. And he was like, no, I don't ever want to change from this. So you knew when you got a text from him how long it took him to send it to you. But I was telling her a story. She's like, oh yeah, I had to write to Apple and have them send me an iPhone that still had the home button on it. I'm like, oh my God. What am I going to? I'm going to be them soon, Greg. Okay, let's get into basketball. Let's turn on to something that's a little more exciting here. So we have one lonely game that is tipping off at 8 o'clock. Pardon me, at 7:30. Wait, where's my schedule? Sorry, I've got.
So there's one 7 o'clock game between
one 7 o'clock game. Okay, that's what it was. I knew there was a lone.
The first thing I was doing here was I was just going into the Sims tool. I've run lineups for tonight's slate. So while we're talking through this, we've got this as a point of reference. And if you guys want to sign up for any of the NBA tools that we have at Stokastic.com, there's a link for that below. You get the Sims tool, the most affordable package, our lineup generator that's less than $15. And then also gets you access to our Discord channel. So if you're watching the shows and you ever want to at me to ask questions during the shows, I answer those from Discord. But also, I'm in Discord all the time. So if we're playing a slate and, you guys want showdown questions related, you could ask me in there. Or if there's late news, players get scratching on how it's impacting my lineups, we update people in there as well. So anything you guys want to sign up for NBA packages, including the Sims tool, which I've got on screen here, you could sign up using those links that we have below. But first game, it is the Houston Rockets against the Boston Celtics, EMac.
All right, look at that. Always the professional helping me out here. So there's one 7 o'clock game, one 7:30 game, and then there are 3 at 8, 2 at 8:30, and then they're skipping the 9:30 game on DraftKings and FanDuel. So the important thing to remember about the Rockets here is they will be without Tari Eason for a 7th game with the sore leg or his left lower leg issue. Dylan Brooks will be missing his 10th game with an oblique. And then doubtful is Jeff Green tonight, because this is a back-to-back and a 3-4. Houston lost in overtime in Chicago on Wednesday. Last night they won in Detroit 112-110. So the starters all played heavy minutes. So in these two games, Fred VanVleet averaged 42 minutes. Jalen Green averaged 30. Smith averaged 44. And then Şengün averaged 38. So everybody's been playing very, very heavy minutes in this. And the other thing you want to think about when we look at things such as that is they're such negative or they're heavy underdogs in this game. It's hard to really trust them. They're going against one of the best defenses in the league. On the Boston side, well, how can we really get excited about them? They're fully healthy. Horford is available. He was out of the last game because this is a 3-4, but not a back-to-back. Their first two were the back-to-back, and they didn't play again on Monday for MLK. So it looks like we could see some in-game rest for some of the Boston players. Wouldn't be a complete shock if Tatum or Brown was an outright rest candidate tonight. There's nothing overly exciting in this matchup, Greg. Do you see anything coming up, or is anything coming up in the Sims from this game? Because for me, it's going to be a cross-off, and then I'm going to be fully engaged on the show tonight because I won't have lineups to make until 7:30.
Yeah, so if we go ahead and look at some of the initial exposures that I'm getting to here, and even with Houston being a little bit shorthanded, like you mentioned, I mean, we didn't see big Cam Whitmore minutes or anything like that yesterday. I know that he was somebody who a lot of people were wanting to play because of the guys that were out for Houston. But ultimately, it didn't mean that we saw really anybody pick up any kind of real significant additional minutes. We saw Whitmore play 15 and a half. That's certainly not enough for him to be considered viable. Now, if you go ahead and look at the exposures I have here, the player I'm getting the most of is Şengün, and that's only 3%. So I don't really see a whole lot to like from the Houston side of the game. While there are those players out, like you mentioned, none of them are massive needle movers in terms of picking up extra playing time for anybody. And even some guys like Dylan Brooks, Tari Eason being out, the pricing's already been baked in here. So There's nothing really I see here that's all that interesting. If you had to pay up for somebody, Şengün's never a poor option, but it's a very difficult matchup on the road against Boston. Boston's favored by 15.5 points in this game. There's a very high chance of blowout. We don't take that too much into account here, but this is a wide enough spread that I do think we have to consider it. So Houston, not really a team of interest for me.
All right. Are you good just moving on from this one, or is there anything you want to call out or any contingencies you'd like to hit on for Boston, or shall we cover that tonight when we do NBA Live before lock at 6 o'clock?
No, just the exact same thing when we look at the Boston side. I have even less exposure to Boston on my initial run here than I do to the Houston Rockets. So Boston has everybody expected to play tonight. We've got Kristaps Porzingis is in. We've got Al Horford back. The only players on the injury report is Keta, but he doesn't matter because with everybody healthy, he's not even really a rotation guy. So considering how deep Boston is, and then also the chance this could be a blowout, this is a team that I'm very, very comfortable just not really wanting to get any kind of exposure to.
Yeah, and I see Kevin Watkins in chat did mention that Boston rested most of their starters on Thursday. Rested by, they didn't play the second half because they were just getting curb stomped there by the Bucks. This could be the opposite scenario tonight, where you get some in-game rest because they rattle off their, going out to a 20-point lead at halftime here. So they're going to do whatever it takes to get the win. But I bet they pull off they put their foot off the gas in the fourth quarter if they're able to, just because they have more difficult games coming up. All right, let's hit our second game here, Greg. The only other one in the 7 o'clock hour. It's the Washington Wizards, who are 7-point underdogs heading into Atlanta, going against the Hawks. There's a 251 point total here, which is the highest on the slate, which should be no surprise against two teams that are up in tempo and just really don't care about defense. On the Washington side, Johnny Davis is questionable with an illness. That's kind of how management should be feeling about him as their number one or first round draft pick. Questionable, and they should be feeling ill that they made that choice. Still don't know why they did that. Landry Shamet may be away from the team for personal reasons. The last game for the Wizards was on Wednesday. They also play on Monday, so we should have everyone available for tonight. For Atlanta, the only person of note on the injury report, of course, is DeAndre Hunter. This will be his 11th game that he has been out. It is a back-to-back and 3-4 for Atlanta. They also play on Monday. Last night, the non-Capella starters ended up just needing 30 to 32 minutes. The understudies, not even the secondary players, not even the reserves, Greg, the understudies came in last night for the final 342 in the 126-108 loss to Indiana. So clearly the team was looking ahead to today's game. There is the chance that Trae Young could be dealing with a shoulder injury that is affecting him a little bit on offense. He's not on the injury report, but I did want to call that one out. Do you like anybody from the Washington side? Because when they're fully healthy, they just give minutes to everybody as they continue their tankathon.
Yeah, this team is projecting really, really well for us tonight. Some of these players definitely will end up sliding a little bit as we get later into the day and some additional players are rolled out. But at least for right now, we've got guys like Daniel Gafford is one of my most exposed players on the entire slate. He's showing up in 60% of my top 150 lineups here. Tyus Jones is showing up in a third of lineups. Kyle Kuzma in about 20% of lineups. He looks like a good contrarian play because he's only projected for 11% ownership. And we've seen the kind of upside that Kuzma could have this year. And this game, it's expected to be relatively competitive, which you can't say about most Washington Wizards games. And it's a nearly 250-point total, the highest of the day. So definitely a little bit of a down game last time out for Kuzma, but still, I mean, it is 24% usage rate. He just didn't make his shots and ends up scoring not the normal 40-plus fantasy points we see from him. So Kyle Kuzma, I think, is a pretty good contrarian spend-up option. Daniel Gafford and Tyus Jones, these are both really two strong plays to get to in the mid-range. And then a little bit of like Jordan Poole and Delon Wright sprinkled in here, but really the core guys to look at. Gafford, Jones, Kuzma, great matchup in a game that should have a lot of pace.
Do you think, or what is the probability you would have for Jordan Poole scoring 24 or more points, NBA points, for the third consecutive game after not getting above 14 in the preceding 6 games prior to his little bit of a hot streak here?
I don't know, 20-something percent.
Is that trustworthy enough for you?
For what purpose?
For tournaments.
Oh, I mean, I only have so he's viable as a flyer, but not somebody I'd make as a core option or anything.
because he's just 7%. And I know that you and Eric kind of like to look for those overlooked players that have the ability to pop off for 30, 40 fantasy points, right? That's the kind of player we want. Not for tonight, but Fred VanVleet is exactly that player, because if he's dropping his shot, picking up steals, and getting assists, he's great. But otherwise, with this team, when he doesn't have it on offense, which is a lot because he's about a 42% career marksman from the field, he tends to dish out assists and keep the offense running. There's nothing wrong with that at all, but it sucks for fantasy purposes. So Jordan Poole really has one direct path to fantasy relevance, and it is scoring. This is the matchup for him, but he has been beyond enigmatic this season, to borrow a word from Laffy. So I was just curious where you were coming in on that one. Anything else for you from the Wizards?
Nope. It's a team I'm getting a lot of exposure to right now.
All right, keeping in the same vein there with Washington, I'm going to transition over to DeJounte Murray, who was at the University of Washington. Sadly, they did not win the national title, and they just lost their coach, DeBoer. He is now going to go to Alabama. Sad times for my alma mater, Greg. But we have seen DeJounte Murray be very effective, especially against teams that have marginal offensive facilitators, because he does a decent job of collecting assists. His rebounding is down overall from his San Antonio days, but he's still a solid contributor in that category. Plus, he is on a, 6 games where he has scored 24 or more points. So he is picking up the slack a little bit for Trae Young. I prefer Murray over Young. You're getting a $1,900 discount on FanDuel, and then on DraftKings, you're getting a significant $2,400 discount. I think that pushes Young into a very interesting tournament option, but I'd rather take the savings here. It looks like the field is semi-ambivalent on DraftKings, and they are Murray's half the popularity of Young on FanDuel. Is this a function of we don't have a lot of places to spend money tonight? What are your thoughts there with the Atlanta backcourt?
Yeah, so when it comes to Atlanta, as you guys could see on the screen right here, DeJounte Murray is somebody who I definitely am getting to a good chunk of, and he's not projected to be all that popular either. We only got him in 11% of lineups from the contest generator here, but then when I run my lineups and everything through the Sims here, he's showing up in 21% of my lineups. So between DeJounte Murray and Trae Young, I do prefer getting to Murray. If we end up getting more value later on in the day, then Trae Young would certainly end up looking more viable as an option, because right now we've got Trae Young project for 54 fantasy points compared to 41 for DeJounte Murray. But the reason I have a lot of these guys I'm getting exposure to in the mid-range, like the other side of the game, where I was getting to a whole bunch of Daniel Gafford, getting to a whole bunch of Tyus Jones, is because we don't have a lot of value on the slate at the moment. So with that being the case, that there's kind of not a whole lot of value, but there are a lot of good-looking plays in the mid-range, it ends up with a lot of balanced lineups that are showing up as my top ROI lineups at this point in the day. So if we see more players rolled out later in the day, then we'll start to see guys like Trae Young go up in my exposure. Some of those players in the mid-range end up going down a little bit. But for right now, the mid-range is what looks best. And DeJounte Murray, who's been playing big minutes as of late, and there's some rumors that they could potentially trade him at this point because the Hawks are pretty lackluster in the standings. They're well below 500. But we have seen a pretty big uptick in usage as of late for DeJounte Murray. Last few games, 28% usage, 31%, 22%, and massive minutes. 32, 38, 40, 35, 35, 37. So higher usage, more minutes. DeJounte Murray is, as of now, the best guy to get to from Atlanta.
All right. I like what you're sharing on the screen there. Now, I want to remind everybody we have a really good deal here. This is for the NBA version of The Sims. But if you utilize promo code DRIVE, as in drive your car, or a team in the NFL goes on a drive, right, up and down the field, you will get the NFL Sims package through the Super Bowl for $99. Now, this includes the main slates, of which we've still got a couple all-day slates left for the next 2 rounds. And then it also includes the showdown contest. Plus, you get the remaining PGA for this week as well as next week to give you a chance to test drive using promo code DRIVE. So that's a pretty good deal. We lowered the price because we wanted everybody to have a good look at it. And then we know NFL's going away, but there's a lot of crossover actually between NFL players and PGA players. It's kind of interesting to see that dichotomy. Of course, NFL is king, but PGA does have a lot of popularity, and the Sims have proven to be quite effective for PGA, which is a rather chaotic sport with not a lot of correlation. So calling that out, that is promo code DRIVE, $99. So you get the NFL Max Sims package along with this week and next week for golf. All right, Greg, let's head to the 8 o'clock games here. We have 3 of them. We are going to go with the Orlando Magic at the Oklahoma City Thunder. The Magic are nearly 12-point underdogs here, sitting in at 11.5 right now. This game is in Oklahoma City, 232 implied point total. Deep breath, you have Orlando without Wendell Carter Jr. He will be missing his 5th game with a sore knee. Franz Wagner is going to be missing his 5th game with a sore ankle. Joe Ingles is likely to rest. He played 30 minutes last night, but that was coming back after a 13-game absence. Gary Harris is slated to miss his 5th game with a calf injury. Marco Fultz unlikely to play on this back-to-back. Remember, he missed a large swath of the season with knee swelling. He has played 4 games. He's kind of capping out in the 16 to 17-minute range, but that's important because now we've got to talk about Cole Anthony as a potential backup. Jalen Suggs is probable. He only played 14 minutes last night, but he was dealing with an illness apparently. So that is a key to monitor. You have Jonathan Isaac should be back. He's missed the last 10 games with a hamstring injury. So we'll have to see what happens with him. And then this is a back-to-back, as I mentioned. The Orlando Magic played yesterday. They lost in Miami, 99-96. Very sad. It was a close game with Paolo Banchero playing 36 minutes. Creative player Caleb Houston playing 32 and Chuma Okeke playing 29. Those were 3 of the 5 starters for OKC. They last played on Thursday, and then they are the featured game on Monday night. So everybody is well rested there. What do you see with all the moving parts here for the Magic?
Yeah, not a whole lot to like. A brutal matchup on the road against OKC. OKC has been one of the better defenses in the league, particularly because of Chet Holmgren. Chet is now, I think, last I looked at EPM, I think he was 99th percentile in defensive EPM this year. So he's been an absolute monster this year. So Chet has been a massive upgrade to OKC. As a result, tail end of a back-to-back, like I said, 11.5-point underdogs are the Orlando Magic. They have a fairly low team total, even though the game total is at 232, because we are seeing that there's such a wide spread in this game. We're not expecting a lot of those points to be scored by Orlando. And one thing that is very annoying about this team, EMac, is that they have a healthier backcourt now. So with that being the case, Anthony Black playing minutes, Cole Anthony, Jalen Suggs also, he's not on the injury report. He's been in and out of the lineup or dealing with injuries for a lot of the year. It's really hard to project big minutes for any individual player out of the backcourt for Orlando. And there actually is nobody on this team that we're projecting for north of 30 minutes in the backcourt, which does make it really hard to get to any of those guys. The one who stands out the most is Mo Wagner, because we have Wendell Carter Jr. out, because Franz Wagner remains out, but he's not any kind of real priority. And he also is somebody who's also just kind of here because of some of the lack of value that we have on the low end right now. So he's the most appealing option. I'm getting to him here in 14.7% of my lineups, and just benefiting from the absence of Wendell Carter Jr. Other than that, though, there isn't a whole lot to see from Orlando in a tough matchup against OKC.
All right. I see you guys talking a little bit about ownership there and projections in chat. One of the things, this escapes a lot of people, but if you are trying to do the math in your head, it's fine. But a point of reference that often gets overlooked is on DraftKings, where we have 8 players in the lineup. The total projection needs to add up to 800%, right, for all the lineup slots. And then on DraftKings, it adds up to, or FanDuel, it adds up to 900%. Sometimes that plays with people's minds just a little bit, but it really plays out when you start to look at centers, and in particular on FanDuel, center only eligible players. And that is something that as you start, the boom bust tool takes care of this for you, but as you start to look at players that really are focusing in on the one position, and it's a limited supply with even with the multi-position eligibility, it's something that on the smaller sites, you really can start to see decision points jump off the page for you, and where you can take a stand on somebody that may only be, a 0.1 or 0.2 fantasy points per $1,000 off of the best play. And you're like, oh, wait a second, I can just tweak this a little bit, gain some serious leverage. Then you have to think about that. I'm talking about fantasy point per dollar ratio. So that's the average. So the total scores would be different for Şengün versus Gafford. But if you start to look at their point per dollars, that's what trickles down through the rest of your lineup at the other position. So there's your brief moment of NBA strategy on the NBA strategy show. Anything you would like to call out from the Thunder?
Yeah, if there's more value that opens up, we could always end up finding ourselves to SGA as a spend up option. But the problem with the rest of these guys on this team now is they've got to be pretty expensive. Like Jalen Williams seen a big uptick in price. He's at a ceiling as far as his price goes. Josh Giddey has had some big performances, but it's such an outlier that it's not points I want to chase. So we saw a triple-double from Josh Giddey last game. Did you play that slate, EMac, by chance?
I play all the slates, Greg. I did not have Giddey. I did notice that. And if I remember correctly, it happened rather quickly. Yeah, 22 minutes. He had a triple-double. Did not have that on the bingo card.
So that was small. It was a 4-game slate the other day. Giddey was like 4% owned. Then Bobby Portis was 1% owned. Those two guys just absolutely crushed the slate. So there's like a couple of people that lineups way better than everybody else. But it was because in the $15 on DraftKings, there was only 5 people or 6 people in the entire field that had a Bobby Portis and Josh Giddey lineup combination on a 4-game slate the other day. But none of this is sustainable. He had a 13% usage rate. He made every single shot that he took. And then he had a triple-double in 22 minutes. These are not points I want to chase. I don't expect that he's going to shoot 100% from the field. I don't expect he's going to be able to put together another triple-double in 22 minutes. So Josh Giddey, whose minutes have just been down in general, the last few games for Giddey, 22 minutes. He was playing great last game. That was due to a blowout. Game for that, 20 minutes, 26 minutes, 24 minutes, 22 minutes, 27 minutes, 27 minutes, 21 minutes. We have not seen Giddey play over 30 minutes this year since November 12th. And now that his price has gone up a little bit as well because of that last performance that he had, it's hard for me to get there. Jalen Williams at his ceiling price. So SGA, if more value becomes out there, then yeah, he's a decent enough spend up option. But other than that, I can't really justify getting to anybody else at the moment.
Okay, that sounds like a good one, and if or a good synopsis there. And if anything changes, of course, you get NBA Live Before Lock at 6:00 tonight. Our next game is the Golden State Warriors, who are 12.5-point underdogs here in Milwaukee, taking on the Bucks. 245.5 implied point total. Golden State will be without Moody. He is going to miss a few games with this calf issue. Draymond Green is doubtful. He is still working on his conditioning. This is a back-to-back and a 3-4, and they play again on Monday. Last night, they won in Chicago. This looked like Chicago had the game in hand. It was a 13-point lead at halftime. Curry had 10 points or something at the half. Heck, he had 10 points in the third quarter still, or midway through the third quarter, because I bet his under. He ended up with 27. The team stormed back, won 140-131. That was in regulation. But it's a mercurial ride right now there with the Golden State franchise. On the other side, Milwaukee last played on Thursday. We hit on that. That was when they knocked the snot out of Boston. They play again tomorrow. So they're the only team that's on the front end of a back-to-back. So Milwaukee takes on Sacramento tomorrow. It's important to call that out because this would be the spot for potential in-game rest for Giannis Antetokounmpo. But we have seen Milwaukee stumble in some clear situations where they should be winning games. And as a result, they're kind of in that scrum in the Eastern Conference. So important game. Giannis can have a phenomenal game in a short amount of time, but this could curb his upside just because we could see some lead legs on the Golden State Warriors side. What would you like to talk about from the Warriors? They did change their starting lineup. It'll be interesting to see if Saric plays on the back-to-back. He has played, I think, in the last 2 back-to-backs, but that was the only thing I wanted to call out on that. But otherwise, Golden State, the ever-shifting lineups from Steve Kerr. How are you reading the tea leaves, Greg?
Yeah, so, we'll see when the starting lineup comes out. I tend to think that they're going to do the same again today with Sarge in the starting unit. It is possible that they go back to Trace Jackson-Davis as the starting center. As of right now, we have Looney projected to start at center, which has him as one of the better value plays on the slate. But the chalk of the night and the player that I think makes the most sense for us to want to jam in right now is going to be Dario Saric. He started last night. He played nearly 30 minutes. He played really well, which is why I think he's going to stick in the starting lineup. And with this being a slate where there is not a whole lot of pricing value, EMac, the sites have not been able to price up Saric because today's slate came out prior to last night's slate. So on both DraftKings and FanDuel, Saric looks like one of the better value plays to get to on the slate. He's projected for nearly 60% ownership. I've got him in 2/3 of my top lineups here. If Saric is going to stick in the starting lineup, which seems to be a reasonable way for the Warriors to go, then as things stand right now, he's definitely the best overall value of the night.
All right, pop quiz. How many years do you think Saric has been in the league?
9.
Or 5. Technically, he missed a whole year with an ACL, and that's Basketball Reference doesn't count the current year. So I saw him as 6, and I'm like, wait, he's played more than that. You're right, it's closer to 9. I think it's 8, technically, if we count that missed year. But he's 29. He hasn't played a lot of minutes this season. I was looking at the other back-to-backs. In basically all situations, he was playing 20-ish or less minutes. So I don't think that's a huge concern. But he's one of those players that starts to get in a little bit of that situation. He's not as old as like a Gallinari or some of the other folks that are only playing on one end of the back-to-back. But that was just a call out, just because something could change. I don't think it will, but it's just worth noting at that point. But yeah, you're right. He is coming up as one of the best value plays here.
Yeah, the best value play by a fairly wide margin right now. We've got Looney expected to start. With that being the case in our projections, he shows up in lineups. If Trace Jackson-Davis starts, then it would be the inverse, where Trace Jackson-Davis would be somebody that we're getting to in some lineups. But none of the pay-up options are really looking all that appealing for Golden State.
All right. What about on the Bucks side here?
Yeah, so if we go ahead and look
nobody
at
on the injury report.
One thing that I think that we should definitely take note of is that Bobby Portis will never again do what he did last game. So don't go and chase those points from Bobby Portis. He's not showing up in any of my lineups. Portis was just ridiculous last game. And also, he was having such a good game that they actually left him in to play a little bit more garbage time than they normally would. If we look at the playing time that we typically get out of Bobby Portis, in the games prior to last game, he played 16 against Utah. He played 17 against Houston. He played 18 against Indiana, 20 against Indiana, 20 against the Spurs. So his playing time is fairly capped. I would not expect him to go out and, what did he do? Shot like 10 of 12 from the field or something ridiculous like that last game. So another spot here, these price tags are fairly expensive. Damian Lillard's making to some of my lineups, but I am underweight to the field on him right now. And then as far as Giannis' spend-up option, he's very expensive. We don't have a whole lot of value on the slate, which is going to be a reoccurring theme as we talk about some of these pay-up options. So it's a matchup against the Golden State Warriors team that's definitely struggling. But at the same time, too, I don't really think that there's enough value for me to get up to a lot of these Bucks guys, even though this is a high-paced game. They have one of the highest team totals on the slate. Things change. If more value opens up, Giannis would make his way into a little bit more lineups, but I've only got 4% of them right now. Maybe there's a scenario where I get to like 10 to 15% of guys get ruled out, but not a team I'm getting to in the Bucks.
All right, that makes sense. I'm going to borrow that screen share from you there for a moment here, because I want to talk about BetMGM. And this is one of the more underutilized pages that we have here at Stochastic. So that's why I wanted to grab the screen share here and show everybody. If you go to the Stochastic homepage, you see this drop down here that says deals. It gives you all the current deals we have with all of the sports books, all of the DFS sites, all of the pick'em sites, and any current stochastic discounts that are going on at this time. But if we go over here to sports betting bonuses and we click on BetMGM, who is sponsoring our show today, we can, one, get the promo code here. You can click on this and claim it, or you can click on this link here and claim it. It is the bet $5 and get $158 in bonus bets. So this is going through the Super Bowl with Super Bowl 58. So their deal is you need to make a $5 wager. And as soon as you make that $5 wager, make it your first wager, they're going to give you $158 back, regardless of whether you win or lose on that wager. So that's a pretty good deal. And then you'll have, you usually get a week or so to utilize those bet credits. So it's you can see here we've got the breakdown, talks about where it's available, what they have to play, etc., the different types of wagers you can do, the various deposit methodologies. That's something that's important because some of the less savory sites are very limited on their deposit methods. So it's good to see that a site like BetMGM has all of this stuff available for you. And as always, it's important to note that if you or anybody you know has a gambling issue, please call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. But again, that is the BetMGM. Come through our link. I'll drop this into the chat as well. And you make your first wager of $5, get 158 back in bet credits. Pretty good deal there. Pretty good deal. You still liking the old BetMGM? That's probably the side I miss the most. Being down here in Florida, I really do like BetMGM.
Well, I mean, they've got the no-brainer deal, so take advantage of it because you bet $5, give you $158 in bonus bets. So there's nothing to not like about that.
Absolutely. All righty, let's get on to our next game here. We have New York at Memphis. The Knicks are 8-point favorites. They're going against the Grizzlies. 221 implied point total here. The key thing is Jalen Brunson dealing with a sore calf. That's important to note. The Knicks did not play yesterday, so we don't have an injury report from them. I'm sure we will have something come out this morning, but that is the main one to watch. On the Memphis side, of course, they are without Ja Morant for the remainder of the season. No Derrick Rose Remember Me game tonight. He is out for a few more games. Desmond Bane hurt his ankle in the last game. He is doubtful. And then you have Santi Aldama, who's questionable, but he has missed the last 2 games with a knee injury. This is a back-to-back for the Grizzlies. They lost last night to the Clippers, 128-119. You saw Jaren Jackson Jr. play 30 minutes. Tillman played 31, and then Kennard in the starting lineup played 29. So what do you think here about the Knicks side of thing? We can't immediately jam in Emmanuel quickly if Brunson is out. That's no longer in play, Greg.
Yeah, so it's a little hard to know exactly what the Knicks would do if Brunson isn't able to play because this would be an unprecedented situation. We haven't seen him out since they traded away Emmanuel quickly. Last year when Brunson was out, it was really easy. Like you said, we just plugged in quickly. We knew he was going to be one of the top projected players on a points per dollar standpoint on the entire slate. For this year, though, because I've just pulled up the on-off court numbers, of the players that are like key rotation guys, we just don't have data with Brunson and Quickly both off the court. We've seen Julius Randle's played 53 minutes this year, EMac, with neither Brunson nor Quickly on the court. Josh Hart has played 86 minutes. Quentin Grimes has played 83 minutes. And then the rest of these guys, like no sample size. Dante DiVincenzo played 14 minutes with neither of them on the court. OG Anunoby was just recently acquired. He's only played 22 minutes with Jalen Brunson off the court. So as a result, we don't really have a great baseline to look at in terms of who's going to benefit the most in scenarios where Brunson isn't on the court. So we have to use some, common sense and logic. And Brunson does so much for the Knicks that I think we would have to look at guys like Julius Randle seeing a lot more usage. We would assume a much bigger role for Dante DiVincenzo. But trying to figure out where the minutes would go, I think there's a couple of different ways that we could see the Knicks end up going. Quentin Grimes and Miles McBride, I would expect both of them to pick up some extra minutes off the bench. Whereas the player that I think overall benefits the most from the absence of Brunson is probably going to be Josh Hart. Josh Hart, I could see picking up the biggest bump in playing time. Maybe they move him into the starting line and just go with a big team. I tend to think the Knicks probably would start Miles McBride to be the most likely starter, but there just are not point guards or players that can handle the ball for the Knicks. So I'd be really interested to see what the starting lineup looks like if Brunson isn't out there. The one thing I could tell you for certain, though, is that guys like Julius Randle, OG Anunoby, Dante DiVincenzo would all be making their way into my lineups if Brunson is out.
Would Miles McBride, sorry, I was trying to look and see. It was 2 weeks ago that Dante DiVincenzo had the magical night after the trade with Toronto. But Miles McBride, that was the one guy. Maybe we could see him coming in. I want to see what he played in that game. Yeah, he still only played 18 minutes in that game. I don't think so. Sorry. Nothing exciting there. I was going down a rabbit hole. Guess what? No rabbits. No pot of gold. No nothing. Anything else you would like to cover here for the Knicks side of things?
No, just most importantly is going to be the status of Jalen Brunson. If he's in, nothing looks all that appealing from the Knicks. If he's out, we're going to get those usage bumps that I just mentioned there. And I don't have a great feel for the starting lineup. My best guess is that it would be Miles McBride starting, but I can't say that confidently. So it's one of those ones we're going to have to see what the injury report brings us later in the night, as well as the Knicks starting lineup, because it's an unprecedented situation.
The Memphis side here, Tillman stepping into additional usage. If Santi Aldama returns, I think some of that usage is still going to be there for both of them. If Bane is out, which it looks like he will be, how do you want to see the moving parts on the deck chairs of the Titanic? I mean, the Memphis Grizzlies rotation.
Yeah, sure. So Santi Aldama could potentially be back today. He's officially listed as questionable after missing some time. We still have, obviously, Marcus Smart. He remains out. He hurt his finger last game. I don't know if you saw what happened, EMac, but a game where Marcus Smart was kind of uber chalk. He was like 35% owned in the $15 on DraftKings. He was also like 28% owned on FanDuel, if I remember correctly. He's having a big game. He hits a three. And it looked to me like when he went to celebrate, he did like a 3-point celebration, hit his forehead, finger pops out of place and just destroys his finger. Marcus Smart is now expected to be out for almost the entirety of the rest of the season. He's not expected to be back until March because of that. So one of the weirder injuries I can remember seeing. So Marcus Smart's out for an extended period of time. Desmond Bane is doubtful to play. John Moran is out for the season. This team is incredibly shorthanded. Jaren Jackson Jr. is going to have to take on a whole lot of usage in this spot. So I'm actually kind of surprised I'm not getting to more lineups with him. Part of that is due to the pricing. I'd be inclined to do an ROI boost if I only had 5% of Jaren Jackson Jr. at lock, just because of the amount of guys who are out for Memphis. But somebody who's going really overlooked on the slate, you mentioned Xavier Tillman as somebody who's had to play more minutes lately. And the big reason for that is they cut Bismack Biyombo. So the role of Biyombo made no sense on this team. They'd signed him to a contract earlier in the year, and he was initially a DNP coach's decision for the team. Then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he starts one game, and he kind of goes back and forth between starting, coming off the bench. Some of the games where he would come off the bench, he'd be a DNP coach's decision. And now all of a sudden, he's not on the team anymore. So Biyombo has been terrible all year. It's very odd that he'd be starting over young players on the team when they apparently don't even think Biyombo is good enough to be on the roster. But now that he's gone, it really does solidify the playing time for Xavier Tillman. Even if Santi Aldama plays today, I still expect Tillman to start. I think Aldama could also be limited considering that he was missing time due to a knee injury. Whenever players have lower body injuries, I'm a little more cautious about projecting their minutes coming back than if they were dealing with, like a wrist or a hand injury or something like that, because you don't know where their conditioning is at. So I think Xavier Tillman's one of the best contrarian plays on the slate. Luke Kennard is also somebody who's a very good option to get to, and kind of like that lower / mid-end range of the value, because with all those players who are out for Memphis, Kennard's probably the guy who's going to have to pick up the most amount of playing time, especially when you consider that he's actually an offensive threat. And when you're this shorthanded as Memphis is, the best way to compete against a team like the Knicks that is a playoff team is going to be with variance, with three-point shooting. That's where Luke Kennard comes into play. So Kennard benefiting from the absence of all the core guys for Memphis, and then Xavier Tillman, an overlooked piece that should be playing more minutes with Biyombo out.
Yeah, I had not realized he was going to be out for the year, so that moved him to the reserve list on the aggregator site that I go to pull injuries. It says they hopefully he's back in early March. Yikes! Yeah. This is just.
I want to answer a question that we got from Humboldt. He had asked, "What do you mean by adjust the boost?" Yeah, so let's see right here if the slate was starting and I wanted to get to more of Jaren Jackson Jr. I would go to Jaren Jackson and I could just give him an ROI boost of like 15% and boost ROI. And then if I went back to my lineups, you see right now I only have 5% of Jaren Jackson Jr. But now if I unfavorite my top lineups and favorite my top 150 and then go back to Memphis, you'll see that I'll have a little bit more than the 5% of Jaren Jackson I had before. Not a massive amount. It went to 6.7. So I'd have to give him like a little bit more aggressive of a boost. But see, if I went to Jaren Jackson, just went to like a 40% ROI boost here instead, now I'll probably get to somewhere in the teens or so of exposure to Triple J. So if there's ever a player who you're not getting a ton of that you want more of for any reason that it could be. Just you like that player more than our data does, or maybe you're trying to adjust your lineups. Because something I do a lot is if there are players that are questionable in the later games and I'm getting exposure to the early games, I'll do ROI downgrades to a lot of the earlier starting players so that I could backload my lineups a little bit so that I'm more flexible for kind of the injury news. So that's something you could do with the ROI boost. That is the best way to manipulate the exposure you're getting within the Sims tool. You could do it as much as you want to get it more aggressive. And then also, the bigger the slates there are, the more you're generally going to have to do some of the boosts to get any meaningful amount of players. So right there, like I did a little one to Jaren Jackson Jr., but you can do as high as you want here to make him show up in more lineups. But I did a little boost there that got him from 4% to 8% of lineups.
Yeah, and I'm just showing guys. We have canned videos, evergreen videos for all of this. You can see when Greg goes back, there's a tutorials button on his page, but you come to this landing page and you get all different explanations of the Sims. And then, as mentioned in chat, you want to get some more discussion around it. There is, if you are already a member, you can join the Sims, the Stochastic Sims channel. That's something I've been looking at a lot. The other thing I can't stress enough, and this is something that I've been working on as I've been finally getting a little more time here with the day job and want to move away from using the optimizer and get more and more into the Sims for basketball. It's easier with football because you have a little more time. You can take action a little bit more deliberately. With basketball, you have to move so quickly. Play around with the tools and the settings. Give somebody a 20 or a 30% ROI boost. See what happens. It's a little different, and sometimes it'll take a little longer. The navigation of unchecking or unfavoriting, refavoriting, doing the sort, doing the filters, it's not going to be second nature from the jump. So get those reps in now instead of when the clock is ticking down towards zero right before lock. And that's something I do want to stress here. But the Sims tool, it's gonna this is what is going to be replacing optimizers here, and there are a lot of them out there, but we are on the cutting edge and adding additional features and sports all the time here. So again, promo code DRIVE gets you all the NFL Max Package Sims for through the Super Bowl, $99. We're going to throw in the rest of this week and next week's golf as well, so you can check that out. Anything else you want to mention here from Memphis? Luke Kennard love, I think, is where we were sort of leaving off there. The Grizzlies got anything else for you?
Nope, we've hit on everything that I want to talk about for Memphis.
All right, 2 to go. The New Orleans Pelicans are underdogs by a bucket in Dallas, taking on the Mavs. 231.5 projected point total here. It's important to note that this is a back-to-back for New Orleans, and they play again on Monday. Why is it important? Because it's a back-to-back? Well, because the question of whether or not Zion Williamson is going to play is going to be looming. He played 35 minutes last night. Trey Murphy he played 28 minutes last night, but remember, he's been dealing with a variety of injuries this season, so he's a good rest candidate. And then on the questionable side, just because we don't know, and we've seen them rest in some games, you've got Brandon Ingram, who played 34 minutes last night, and CJ McCollum, who played 30 minutes last night. Now, with the close projected point total, remember Luka Doncic is out, I'm expecting maybe Zion sits, but I'm guessing Ingram and McCollum are going to play. Joval played just 26 minutes last night. Dallas, Luka's missed the last 2 games with counting tonight, he will have missed 2 games with an ankle injury. So Exum has been out 6 games now with a foot injury. And then you've got Green is questionable with an illness. Derek Lively has missed the last 5 games with his ankle injury, and he's questionable. So he's close to a return. But don't pay attention to the Maxi Kleber. He keeps getting listed as questionable. He hasn't played in 2 months. He's dealing with this dislocated toe or some sort of injury like that. He hasn't played in 2 months. When he returns, who knows what he's going to play. I'm not worried about him in any case. But that means we get the man who is his own king, I guess, Kyrie Irving. He has put up some monster numbers without Luka. He is shaping up to be probably the best play of the night here, Greg. Where are the Sims taking you? Are you above the field in the projections matching, or below with Kyrie? And then we'll go back to the mishmash that is the Pelicans.
Yeah. So just so we could, because we could go right to Dallas after this, but on New Orleans, I don't even know how we talk about them right now. I don't expect Zion to play. I don't expect Trey Murphy to play. I don't even know that Ingram and McCollum end up playing. So there isn't really too much I think we could say here until we get an updated injury report, because even now I'm just speculating. We have Zion in our projections right now. I think it's fairly unlikely he plays with it being a tail end of a back-to-back. And there's a number of other guys that could be out on this team as well. So EMac and I will be on NBA Live before lock tonight. We'll have more information. We could cover this. As of right now, New Orleans, I don't really have a great way to tell you who's going to be in or who's going to be out. We did see in the YouTube chat that Kill the Itch said to us, the Pels coach said in the postgame that he used more players today. That is usually an indication when a coach says that, hey, we are going to be resting guys. So we'll see what that injury report ultimately ends up being. I'm expecting a handful of guys to be out for New Orleans, and we'll have updates later on the day on that. As far as the Dallas side of the game, yeah, it's a team I'm getting to a whole bunch of. Luka is out, but keep in mind that some of these players have also been priced up. So it's not like Jaden Hardy is the same min-price guy we were able to get to on the last slate. So he's only showing up in 7% of lineups for me. The players I am getting to on the high end, Kyrie Irving, no surprise here at all. Kyrie is taking on a much bigger role for Dallas in the games that Luka's been out. There was one game where Kyrie really shit the bed like a month ago when a bunch of players were out, but that was a game where Kyrie himself was banged up. He ended up sitting the game after that. So I do think that Kyrie, probably the best overall pay-up option that we have as of now when you consider the combination of him being expensive, but not like uber expensive or anything like that. We do have him project for 57 fantasy points in the absence of Luka today. And then Derek Jones Jr. picking up a little bit more usage and playing time. He's showing up in a good amount of lineups for me as a mid-range option, as is Tim Hardaway Jr. Although with that said, I am underweight to the field on THJ right now. We've got him here projected for nearly 60% ownership, and I have him still in a healthy amount of lineups, 50%, but that is less than what the field is getting to. Hardaway started last game. I expect him to start again.
Yeah, and the thing with Hardaway is it all comes down to, is he putting the old biscuit in the basket? Last game he was 10 for 20 from the field, 6 of 13 from beyond the arc, 6 of 7. That 7 is the season his second highest of the season for free throw attempts. He also had 6 rebounds, which is his second most of the season, and 4 assists, also the second most of the season. So he had everything going his way, along with 2 steals, which tied his high for the season. So he got there because everything broke his way. We could see that easily slide back to a 27 fantasy point night. That's just the thing you're dealing with there with Tim Hardaway Jr., who is another year older. What would be cool is if he has a son, Tim Hardaway III, that ends up making the NBA. That would be awesome.
And it would be like a the third one would be super progressive. So it would be like a scale. If you remember some of the old comments from Tim Hardaway Sr., he was not very accepting of different people, EMac.
We'll see. But we'll leave those other things to other people to discuss on safe spaces where everybody's nice to each other, like Twitter. It's a good spot to have discussions.
Everybody's nice there.
I'm nervous about Jaden Hardy. I mean, it's not because he's coming off the bench. It's just that we have not seen him consistently do well when he's had these opportunities. And he, I think, is a dangerous option tonight. I'm scared of him, but I see the field is not exactly going all in 12%. So
yeah, and I mean, we'll see what ends up happening with the starting lineup. If Hardy starts, it would definitely be different than if he comes off the bench. He came off the bench last game. He was still really popular. I still played a bunch of him, and he definitely ended up crushing in that game. But if he's going to remain coming off the bench, which is what we have him projected for, is to come off the bench and play minutes in the low to mid 20s. With that being the case, he ends up being projected for 21 fantasy points. His price point has gone up, so Hardy not nearly as appealing as he was last slate.
Yeah. Would you just take Seth Curry out of your player pool at this point?
No. I mean, if he shows up, he's not showing up in any lineups for me, but I wouldn't go in and say I cannot play Seth Curry. He's not showing up right now, but it's not because I did anything intentional. He just didn't show up.
All right. I only say that because he ended up in I played 100 lineups the other game, and he ended up in 2 of them. And one of them was one of my better lineups, obviously, because he was very cheap. He had 1 fantasy point or something obnoxious like that. I think he only played 9 or 10 minutes. So let's hit the last one of the night. Sadly, Victor Wembanyama has been given a day of rest for today. Last night, he dropped the hammer in 20 minutes. Greg. He absolutely just crushed. He came in for a few minutes. I think it must have been late. He got a third quarter rotation, and that was kind of it, sadly. But God, he has just really put the hammer down the last few games. He's not available tonight. Also for the Spurs, Dougie McBuckets may or may not play. He's one of those folks that may or may not play on back-to-backs. He only played 12 minutes last night. Everybody got minutes for the Spurs. It's a back-to-back of 3 and 4, and they play on Monday. Last night, they just absolutely destroyed Charlotte, 135-99. Nobody played over 26 minutes. The Bulls seemingly play every single day at this point, Greg, but realistically, they have played, this is their back-to-back 3 and 4, and they're playing on Monday. They lost 140-131 to Golden State, as we mentioned. Levine played 35 minutes. There's a chance he sits this one out because, remember, he has played 4 games since returning, but he missed 17 games with a foot injury, and they're probably going to move on from him and see if they can flip him for any sort of assets today. So I think they'll be protecting him. Looking to the Bulls, do you think Zach plays tonight?
I do not. He's currently in our projections. My best guess is that he's going to end up getting ruled out. We're going to have an injury report update. Let's see, it's 10:55 now. So in about 3.5 hours, I'm going to predict that Zach LaVine ends up getting ruled out. Assuming that is the case, we'd be getting to a little bit more. I mean, Alex Caruso is already showing up in lineups for me, but he would project for more minutes. And then we'd also get more usage to go to both Vooch and DeRozan, already players who I'm getting to. And, good matchup for them against the San Antonio Spurs. So this is a Bulls team that, assuming that LaVine sits, there's some extra playing time to go around. There's also extra usage. So Kobe White, who's really at a ceiling price. I don't really think I'm going to get to a ton of Kobe White, but he would be going from somebody who having 3% a lot, it's maybe like 6 or 7%. And then Vooch, DeRozan, Patrick Williams, assuming LaVine is out, these are all guys who'd make it into a good chunk of lineups for me, but we'll see what ends up happening with LaVine.
So here are DeRozan's minutes, starting with last night going backwards. 41, 43, 44, 38, 38, 30, 37, 37, 40, 40, 36. And that was when he faced off against his former team, the San Antonio Spurs. He is playing a crap ton of minutes. He is getting tons of field goal attempts here. He's actually taking threes. Sometimes he makes them, but he's actually taking them again this season. Yeah, there's a lot to like with him tonight here. Do you think you didn't? I don't think you mentioned Dosunmu. Is he someone that might start to pop if LaVine is out?
Probably not.
Okay.
Probably not. He's been a really, really poor fantasy producer this year. So I'll pull up Io's stats here. So Io Dosunmu this year has played a total of, here it is. So he's played 38 minutes, 23 minutes per game, 16 fantasy points. So think about it this way. Even if you gave him 34 minutes. So if we're going to say that Dosunmu plays 34 minutes tonight, we'd be looking at a baseline projection of like 23 fantasy points.
That would be what they call no bueno, Greg. No bueno. That's what they say at the burrito place you go to, right?
Yeah, because all burrito places they don't speak English at burrito places.
It's one of those things, as an American, I'm well versed in this, and I do appreciate the authenticity of Taco Bell.
You go to a burrito place, it's just a high school kid working behind the counter.
Looking here, the Bulls, on defense, last 10 games, allowing 114 points per 100 possessions. That's kind of the league average is between 113 and 116, sort of depending on the time frame that you end up grabbing there, if it's 5, 10, or 15 games. So really not a lot to see there. With no Wemby, I guess that means the cast of thousands has 22 minutes that will be redispersed. More importantly, there's some production, scoring, field goal, and rebounding opportunities. It looks like the projections are liking Jeremy Sohan, Keldon Johnson, and Devin Vassell. Could probably throw in Trey Jones there, but his salary has really been ticking up. He has only put up 22 fantasy points in each of his last 2 games here. His first, that's being in the starting lineup. His first 2, prior to that, he had 32 and 33. But a lot of his points do come on assist or a lot of his assists come on passes to Wembanyama. How do you feel about the remainder of this game, either side here?
Yeah, so normally you think
Drummonds.
Yeah, normally you'd think a player the caliber of Wemby being out, you go, oh, that has to make a really big difference. And then you look at his recent games, and he just isn't playing very many minutes. They're being very cautious with him, which totally makes sense. The Spurs are non-competitive this year. He has been absurdly good from a fantasy perspective as of late. Last night, EMac, he played 19 minutes and scored 46 fantasy points. So, all right, cool. So we're distributing 19 minutes to other people. But what does it matter? Nobody's picking up all that production that he was able to, really dial in just the 19 minutes he played. And the game before that, he played 21 minutes and scored 50 and a half fantasy points. So his production is just absurd from a fantasy standpoint. We're looking at a couple of years from now, Wemby could be averaging like 70 fantasy points per game or something totally absurd. As far as tonight, though, him taking his 20 minutes off the books, like, sure, it goes to some other guys like Sandro, who shows up in 2% of my lineups. Dominic Barlow shows up in, 1% of lineups. But there's nothing real significant. There's nothing I really want to get to from the Spurs, because those extra minutes, they don't do a whole bunch to help a lot of guys. And then even some of the usage of getting distributed, all these guys suck. And, Devin Vassell is a good real-life player. He's probably the second best player on the team behind Wemby. But he's also at a price point where I don't really feel a need to get to him. So nothing is in any meaningful amount of lineups that I'm getting to from the Spurs.
All right. Anything else you want to mention, or shall I do a quick little screen share here from our friends at OddsShopper?
Nope, that's it. That's everything we've got to talk about.
All right, so we have really boosted up OddsShopper here, lowered the price, $14.95 per week, $49.95 per month. Lots of bells and whistles. There are some free tools here. We have a expert picks section here. You can quickly find everybody's wagers in the same spot all at once here. When the contributors post them, you'll see Greg and Lindy posting their NFL stuff relatively shortly. We have the premium betting tools, which gives you quickly, I'm in Florida, so it geolocates you. So great if you're in the state that has sports wagering. I flip over here to New York, but then, and now because I'm talking, it's going to take a second to get up there, but you can look at all the different wagers. We have the OddsShopper rating. This takes into account size of the bet, probability of it hitting, and the different lines that are available. We have the EV, which is the expected value calculator. I am EMac. The EV on EMac is entertainment value, but we can sort by this, find the better bets. If you see one that you like and want to do a little odds shopping across the different books, we can look here. If it stops moving here, I guess it's going to click there on Josh Allen, but we can see here we have his total rushing attempts under 9, but look at the dichotomy here, plus 100 on PointsBet. You get a 3-point hit there on Sugar House, where it's minus 134. And then you can see even down on Caesars or ESPN Bet, they drop it by a whole rushing attempt and still don't give you as good of a price as they're giving you on PointsBet. That's what we call shopping the odds, shopping the books, finding the different spot. And you can find some really, really crazy ones, but that's something you can utilize as you look at this. And then, as I mentioned, I like to go over here. We have the Parlay Builder, which builds parlays out for any wagering site, as well as the fantasy pick'em sites. But I like to go here to the fantasy pick'em sites, because then, as I'm looking at somebody that is app only, like Sleeper, I can easily come here. It filters on Sleeper, and then I can quickly find my wagers. Oh, look at these great two top popping up at the top with C.J. Stroud and Jared Goff and Puka Nacua. Well, they're for 2 of those 3. Not for Goff, but 2 of the 3, those are the promo bets. So if you wonder what promo, I can't find it on my side. Is it? Do I have to go look at Twitter? No, you can just come here. And if there's a bet screaming at the top, you can see it's highlighted in green. That's one of their special promotion wagers. And that could either be for new signups, or in this case, for Sleeper, they're actually giving those to all users. So wanted to call that out. So if you can't get to BetMGM, where they're giving you that gimme $158 if you wager $5, this is the next best thing if your state is not as enlightened as the rest of the world. All right, Greg, that's it for us. Any final thoughts before we slide on out there?
No, that is going to do it for us here. Thank you very much for watching, guys, and like the video. Subscribe to the YouTube channel.
All right. Well, you guys can follow Greg on at G Ehrenberg DFS on Twitter. I'm at EMac DFS. It is stochastic_COM with that, gamers, good luck.